Hi everyone, welcome back to What's This Weapon? And I am almost concealed behind this large black firearm. Right off the bat, this is not original. So if you saw that in the thumbnail, it's not part of this specification. But excitingly, as well as being an HK417 generically, I guess I should show you that first. It's on the magazine well, very neatly as always with H&K. This is a trials rifle for the UK Special Forces adoption of the 417 as the L2A1, quite a little known designation, SACTARASS, which is an acronym, and it's such a long acronym I can't even reliably remember it, so I'm going to have to read from my notes. It is the Semi-Automatic Counter-Terrorist Assault Rifle and Sniper System. I think you'll agree that is the single most ridiculous military acronym that has ever been coined. For a long time, I thought SACTARASS stood for was a word, and they had fit the acronym to some obscure word. Nope, it is purely an acronym. It's not as ridiculous as it sounds once you learn a bit more about the system that was adopted. Because believe it or not, it kind of is a sniper rifle and an assault rifle, which is quite nuts. So it's almost an off-the-shelf, basically it is an off-the-shelf procurement. First generation 417, about 2006 is when this is first introduced. And if you go back to our first 416 video, it is almost the same as that, not in detail, but same basic features as that thing, but in 7.62 by 51, the traditional full power, if you like, NATO cartridge, sometimes referred to as, or the rifles of this nature and the cartridge that go with them are sometimes referred to as battle rifles. I mentioned recently over at the EXP channel, the gaming gun reaction channel, if you haven't tried that out or tried out its predecessor, it is back. It is worth looking at if you at all are interested in video games. I have mentioned there my hatred for the term battle rifle. I've mellowed a little bit on it, but it is essentially useless on a technical level. It doesn't tell you anything. Originates, I believe, with Julian Hatcher, Hatcher's Notebook, 1962. He's the first person I can find in print who refers to a battle rifle, meaning something like an M1 Garand. A traditional, essentially it's a synonym there for a semi-automatic rifle that's a military rifle. It later sort of comes to mean a fully automatic capable rifle, select fire rifle, in a similar cartridge, 7.62/308, 7.62 by 54 rimmed, although there aren't so many in that cartridge. And that could extend to, I guess, although this is where it gets difficult to define, things like 6.5 Creedmoor. And then people use it to describe semi-automatic only rifles that are developed from military designs, you name it. It's been used for absolutely everything. Assault rifle is quite a questionably useful term, although we can define it and then it's useful within that definition. Battle rifle, I really would rather avoid, but if you want to call it that, this is quite a good exemplar of the most consistent modern version of that term. A select fire rifle, because it is still select fire, semi and auto in the traditional HK style, although they don't do the all the bullets MP5 icon here. They have an open box with a single bullet in it to represent a freer amount of bullets, I guess. So no bullet for safe, one bullet for semi-auto, and an open box for all the bullets you happen to have in your magazine if you keep holding the trigger. Now clearly 7.62 by 51 is still quite a potent cartridge, albeit it is a reduced power cartridge when compared to the 30-06 that it was developed from, but it's quite a handful in automatic, and it would be really the only an emergency situation where you would ever use this thing in auto. So that preamble leads me back to the weapon itself and its adoption. So UKSF, 22 SAS and the SFSG, Special Forces Support Group, Special Reconnaissance Regiment, at least those 3 units end up with this thing. 2009, so this thing, I keep having to turn around, but we have a date code up here of AK, along with the Ulm proof mark there of the antler, which goes back to things like the broom handle. It's quite nice to still see that on modern German firearms. So AK is 2009. And this thing is coming into service pretty quickly after these trials in the sort of latter half of the sort of phase of operation, or the unit name, Task Force Black. There are books about that. I won't get into it, won't speculate. But this thing comes in around then. So Afghanistan, Iraq, in full swing by this time. Deployed in both wars, I believe. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Trials. So there would have been more than one of these, of course. We have no details of the trials, still classified, unfortunately, but we can discern a little bit of detail from our modern artifact here, which is what this is. I will pop the scope off because you can, well, firstly, just to underline that this is something we've put on there to sort of demonstrate its long-range capability, but it came to us exactly as you see it here. And from the muzzle backwards, we have damage. So quite the ding on this birdcage flash hider here, or flash suppressor, I should say. Really dinged up. It's been dropped on its muzzle, I dare say. Now, a classic part of military testing with rifles, small arms, is the drop test. I think that's been dropped on its muzzle. Just guessing, really, but pretty good circumstantial evidence for that. Other damage, so it's been dropped on its side as well. There's a good amount of dinging there, what looks like pitting and deformation of the aluminium upper receiver. And you can see that the forward assist has been kind of wrenched down into the wrong angle. It's also sitting at the wrong angle. It no longer functions. Speaking of things that no longer function, the charging handle that came on the weapon, which is the standard 417 charging handle, basically the same AR pattern T handle that we've had since the 60s, but it did have this extended latch here for easier manipulation, left hand only, despite this being pretty ambidextrous, partially I would say. That's been bent over as well, so it's been dropped on its left side, its right side, its muzzle, presumably on the butt as well, and there is damage to the butt plate, probably enough that that's indicative of being dropped on its butt too. There's no visible bending or cracking here at the joint of the buffer tube to the lower receiver, but then it is quite beefy there. So I think we've got quite a bit of evidence there of dropping. We've got general wear and tear, so some more loss of finish and scraping and dinging on the front of this handguard. This full-length handguard with the 4 cooling slots in it is standard. Still standard on the 20-inch barrel variant, which this is, by the way. This is the full-length DMR configuration of this thing. So really interestingly, it's not just a 20-inch barrel variant that got adopted. I don't know if all 3 were trialed, but what gets adopted with different length uppers, you can tell that because in some of the photos in the field, the lower has been painted, a later sort of, I'm going to say trend, but it has a very practical purpose. Lowers and butt stocks have been painted up, and sometimes the uppers don't match. That's consistent with UKSF's use of the DeMarco L119 A1 and A2, where they swap out the uppers on the same lowers. So the barrel lengths that were actually adopted, 20-inch, 16-inch, still usable for accurate shooting at distance, maybe even out to 800 meters. The L129A1 sharpshooter, which is what the Green Army adopted as its DMR, designated marksman rifle, around the same time. That was a 16-inch barrel as well, albeit a much heavier, stiffer barrel that in theory is a bit more precise. I'm not going to get into an HK versus Lewis machine and tool slanging match. You can do that in the comments if you like. But yeah, not quite necessarily this comparable, but the same length. So 20-inch, 16-inch, and 12-inch. Really interesting. So a shorter handguard and a little 12-inch barrel. And in terms of optics, the 16 and the 20-inch running with things like the Schmidt & Bender PM2 scope from the L96. There's a Night Force, that's up to 12 power, but variable. There's a Night Force equivalent used as well. But the 12-inch guns, and probably the 16 inches as well, are running with essentially infantry rifle optics, ACOGs, aim points, the Razor Vortex low power variable optic later on became popular with UKSF a few years later on DeMarco's. So they're using that on this as well. So you've really got a versatile platform here, and I think that's what they're trying to reflect with the rather contrived. Well, I guess it's not contrived because it's not trying to spell a name, but it's nonetheless a very unwieldy acronym. Apologies to whoever came up with it, but it is. But it does reflect what it's doing. It's used for actual sniping. It's used as a sort of DMR support weapon with precision, and it's being used by assaulters and for reconnaissance in the shorter barrel lengths. So really interesting. When I first encountered this in this collection, I assumed it was a direct analog to the L129A1, and they were all running with 20-inch barrels. Not the case. So I've mentioned a few optics there. Some of my research for this came from an airsofter who posted on a Airsoft Snipers forum. We'll put the link in the description for you. He's come up with a Google document, not only with a load of great reference photos of this thing in service, but itemizing all the kit that's been used on it over a 10+ year period, longer than that, of this thing being in service. So rather than me itemize all that for you, go and check out his hard work, because he's done my work for me without me having to pester Hereford. What else can we say about this? So what it definitely came with, these rail covers. So this is a little bit of an outdated quad rail design. It's not great in cold conditions or on bare hands. So it already came with some nice grippy rails on here that are still on the weapon. Great. Other than the 12-inch variant, which had the, again, go back to our HK416 video, the gas block with a folding front sight built into it, the 12-inch 417/L2A1 has that. The 16 and 20-inch have this long handguard with flip-up front iron sight integrated into the rail, and a separate, but necessary obviously, flip-up rear iron sight attached to the rail wherever you choose to attach it. So you've got your backup iron sights on this thing. I'll leave those up since we don't have the optic fitted. Worth pointing out while I remember that there is dirt and grime on this as well. This is always an interesting quandary in museums. Well, it's not really a quandary, I don't think, unless the said dirt and grime is actively a problem for the metal, for the finish of the object. We're going to leave that on there. So we have an RPG-7 from Iraq that still has a fine coating of very, very fine desert sand dust on it. We're not going to remove that. We're not going to clean this thing. Now it's our only HK417, so it is used as a reference piece. So we do have a charging handle that works that we swap out. That's why we have that very long ACOG fitted to it that isn't relevant to this story, but just to explain that. This grip pod, as you can probably tell from the white C1 marking, is some kind of identifier for the trials. So you know which gun you're dealing with, and all the kit that goes with that gun is kept together. That indicates that this grip pod came with it. It's not the standard SA80 grip pod, which I think is from the grip pod company. Correct me if I'm wrong, people that know that. I should know it. Be in my book somewhere. This is the B&T, Brugger and Tomet grip pod. Doesn't have the button at the top that you press and it flicks out, which is a shame in a way because it's quite fun. But for practical purposes, I don't know. This might be the better grip. B&T make great stuff. So to actually deploy and retract this, it's just a case of, like a conventional bipod, you pull, push, and it clicks in, and you pinch and pull, and out it pops. To me, it does feel more robust. You've got metal legs here than the other grip pod. Harris bipods also in use on these things when they're in more of a sniper role. These things I'm sure fell out of favour over time with SF. I mentioned this being ambidextrous. It's not fully. In this era, not much was. So we don't have an ambidextrous bolt hold open, which the HK417 A2 does. There are only 2 major variants of this. In theory, the 417 base model, which is this, an A1 variant, and the A2, which is the one you'll see typically in a tan colour, has the ambidextrous bolt hold open, has a bowed trigger guard. The modern furniture, the slimline buttstock in the yellow colour, and more modern handguards, although they're H-key. I don't believe there's an M-lock variant for this. There might be if you specify it when you order them, I don't know. And I believe the 20-inch variant still has the quad rail. The barrel lengths seem to have changed, by the way. They're ½ an inch out from what this was when it was acquired by the UK. So 12.5, 16.5, although the 20 inch is still 20 inch, so only 2 of them appear to be different. Not sure why that is, but it is. But we do have our ambidextrous safety selector. The charging handle is ambidextrous by default, of course, and it's not a bullpup, so you don't have the problem of you can't fire from the left shoulder if you need to. So this has been in service now since 2009. I believe it's under replacement, but I don't have any details of the timescale of that or what it's being replaced with. But it has seen, if it does come out of service imminently, it's already had a good 15 years of service, presumably doing a good job. Now, I want to finish on an interesting thing I noticed when I first learned the designation of this thing in service. L2A1. That's weird when you think that everything at that time was being introduced in the L100 series. Well, 1999-ish, you've got L119, you've got L129, round about the same time as this. Just about everything was coming in the triple digit, beginning with a 1. We had yet to make the huge jump to L400 and something, but anyway, at the time it was somewhat consistent and it was L100 and something. This comes in as L2A1, a rifle with an L2 designation. Bizarre, I thought. And then I thought, hang on a minute, the United Kingdom Armed Forces absolutely love the L1A1 SLR, the self-loading rifle of the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, very early 90s. You never hear a bad word against it. They love the power of the cartridge. It was thought to be reasonably accurate, robust, did the job. Absolutely love the thing. I cannot help thinking, this is speculation on my part, but it's the only explanation I can think of. They wanted a sequel to the L1A1 on some level. Clearly it's not adopted in a parallel role, and it's automatic capable, so it isn't a direct analog. It's not made by FN either, but I think I have to wonder if someone responsible for designations went, let's call it the L2A1, as well as its long designation as well. But that brings me back to what its actual service designation is. SACTARASS is kind of the system. The actual rifle is designated Assault Rifle, 7.62 millimeters, L2A1. I think it's the first rifle in British history to be officially designated Assault Rifle, which is ironic because most people would say that it's not with that full power 7.62 cartridge. But when we look at the roll and the 12-inch barrel version, the fact it's automatic, it does in fact fit, at least with the German definition of a Sturmgewehr, because the Sturmgewehr, the MP43, MP44, STG-44, yes, that coins the term assault rifle, and it does so with a light recoiling, reduced power, lighter weight cartridge that sets the trend for the only really helpful definition of an assault rifle, i.e. a select fire rifle chambering a reduced power or intermediate cartridge. But that's not how the German language uses Sturmgewehr. Germany, Austria, Switzerland, they all call things Sturmgewehr that are full power, 7.62 NATO or otherwise. So, and Russian, Avtomat, Automat is not specific to an intermediate cartridge. It's not quite the same thing as automatic rifle, but you know, it's quite fluid. A military rifle that can be used in the assault is essentially another definition of assault rifle, but much less helpful and role-based and quite ephemeral in a way. So still to be avoided, and I also still would avoid battle rifle, but I won't go back on that rant. But is this the world's largest assault rifle? You decide. Thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate it, as always. Exciting stuff going on here at the Armouries. We have our new Gladiators exhibition opening 28th of June. The tickets are available now for that, so check out the website for those. Also check out our shop, as always. But there are also going to be some Gladiator-specific products there this time as well. There is also my book, Introduction to the Arms and Armour of the Second World War. We have only just recovered from the onslaught of orders that came in the last time I mentioned it, so thank you very much for that. We definitely wouldn't say no to a similar onslaught in the future. Whatever you do, though, we'll see you here again next week.